Okay, hi, my name is Bill Rogers, and this is Lesson 5 assignment. I'm going to compare and contrast an algorithmic and convolution reverb and demonstrate some of the differences between the two. I'm going to be doing this demonstration in Studio One 2, which is what you see right now on screen. Let's leave the mix up. I've turned on two drum tracks. You can see they are left and right overhead mic drum tracks, and both tracks are routed to this effects send, and I'm going to demonstrate the algorithmic reverb that's built into Studio One first. I'm going to open that up and edit it so you can see. So this is just called room reverb. It's algorithmic. You can change I like this little diagram of the room size in the middle. You can choose presets, but I'll just leave it to room. You can change the size. You can change the width, the height, all of which affects the degree of reflections, the length of the reflections. You can decide the distance between, you can see the green right there, is the listener and the sound left and right sound sources. They're listed here, color-coded left and right. Listener is green, so you can change the distance. I can move the listener closer to the sound source. I can move the listener a little bit closer to the left, so he hears the left reflections a little bit more, or I can move the listener to the right, so he hears the right reflections a little bit more. Plane, let's see what this does. Oh, that's whether you're closer to the ceiling or closer to the floor. So you can just pretty much play with those different settings until you get something that you like. On the right here is the mix, which I'm going to crank up just so we can clearly hear the effect of this algorithmic reverb. And same thing with the dry wet mix. I have turned up 100%. So here it is. Here are the drum tracks with no reverb. Okay, now let's turn on the room reverb, and I'll expand it so you can. There it is, totally wet. Changing the height, changing the size. There you can see it's a much narrower sounding reverb. The reflections are a lot tighter, not as spread out, not as airy. And we're going to turn on the open air reverb, and we're going to edit that. Now in the open air reverb, this is a convolution reverb where I can load different rooms or different sounds. So if I click on that, I have loaded these sounds from Echo Thief. They're sampled impacts from different places. This was free. I'm going to choose a venue, Steinman Hall, the site from which I got this impact. This is Echo Thief, and there's an actual image of Steinman Hall and a description: plaster, wood, upholstery. And this is the impact sample that was taken there. Don't know if you could hear that. Tells you a little bit about the location, allows you to download the impulse. It took me a while to figure this out, but I downloaded the impulses and I loaded it into this convolution player. There you go, Steinman Hall. So we have it turned on. I'm going to turn the mix down. Oh, it's locked. Let's unlock it. There we go. I'll turn the mix down. So you can just hear it sans reverb. Now I'll turn that mix up so we can get the sound of Steinman Hall. Then we can change some of the parameters here. Pre-delay, length of the echo. Gain on different frequencies here. You can see that's a mid bump, high mid, high end, or this is, a low frequency cut here. There, it gives you the frequencies that you can emphasize or de-emphasize to change the sound of the sample. But that's your convolution reverb. It's a little bit more subtle when I turn it up in the mix. But what's nice is it had a very natural sound. I guess there are people in two different camps of reverb. You have way more control with the algorithmic reverb, in my opinion. Room reverb. There we go. So that gave us ultimate flexibility in terms of the size of the room. Whereas the convolution reverb is based on a single room. So this gives you a lot of flexibility, but since the convolution reverb is based on an actual venue and natural reflections, it gives a very natural sound to maybe not mixing the reverb for just a couple of drum tracks, but maybe it's the type convolution reverb is something that you put on the master mix at the very end to give it just a greater sense of space, depth, width, etc. So there's an example of two different reverbs, the room reverb, algorithmic in Studio One, and open air. There we go, which has simpler controls, just processing of the frequencies, EQ, and some control of the speed at which the reflections happen. But you're stuck with one core reverb, in this case a sample of Steinman Hall. I hope you found that helpful, especially if you're using Studio One, because it took me a long time to find out which reverb in here was the convolution reverb, which is open air, and it took me a long time to find some free samples online that sounded good. And Echo Thief has a lot of different samples included. So good luck with your mixing and your mastering with reverbs. Thanks for listening. Hope you found this helpful.